Good afternoon, friends, and thank you. And I really do want to thank the organizers of ESG Adria for inviting me here. It's been eye-opening, it's been stimulating, there's been wonderful weather, and you guys are extra special because you've come away from the main auditorium to come here to hear me. So thank you very much. But look, I know there's a very large audience for this third summit. I know it's building, I know there's much more to do. And I'm looking forward to some interesting announcements tomorrow about the future of this summit. I won't spoil it or leave any surprises there. But what am I going to talk about? And yes, my name's Kulveer. I am Lord Ranger of Northwood. For those who don't know, I'm a peer in the British Parliament. I sit in the House of Lords. It's a huge privilege. I'm very fortunate to be there. But my background is I spent almost 30 years in industry, mainly in the technology sector. And today, I'm going to regale you with a short speech, and then we can have some questions. So please think of questions while I do this, about the next phase of digital transformation. But to start, we have to think about where have we been. And over my career, I have in some small way, because there's always teams, it's not I, it's we, teams who deliver these things. I've been involved in a number of some really interesting projects and programs. In 2003, having spent 3 years on this program as a whippersnapper of a management consultant, yes, I was one of those people, we delivered the Oyster card in London. Now, I don't know if many people will be aware of that, but it was the first contactless technology implementation in Western society. Now, why do I say Western society? Because there was one other city that got there before us, Hong Kong. But Hong Kong had done it with British engineers. But what we did was we applied that to the London Underground. Now, why was that so seismic in its delivery? It meant it was the first time that we had that kind of technology for the mass public. We had e-money as not just a concept, but a reality. We had people's data being collected. People didn't understand what that meant. And in fact, people's response was, so you will know I will get on a tube train and I will get off, and what time I did that? I don't want that. So our response to that was to say, you know what? We will hide this data, we will bury this data, we will put it away, because nobody wanted data. Can you imagine that? 2003. The critical thing was we had to trust the machines. We hadn't had to do that before, not in terms of everything we were doing. And that project changed my perspective on what it meant to deliver innovative technology with the private sector, in a public sector environment, with mass change, culture change, change for the public, and change for the better. I was then invited in 2008 by my friend, who was then Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, to join him at City Hall and take on the transport brief for London, which was another great privilege. And as somebody who likes early adoption, pushing the boundaries of technology, one of the first things I did was look at initiatives to bring electric vehicles into London. This is 2008. And we set up the London Electric Vehicle Partnership. We also looked at bringing the best cycle hire scheme in the world to London. It is the best scheme in the world. We won the awards. But it wasn't just about cycling. It was about harnessing new technology, bringing in apps, bringing in data, bringing in a better way of people to engage with a new form of public transport to make it successful. We championed a new Route Master bus. You know, the one you can jump off the back of? They said it couldn't be brought back. We brought it back. But we didn't just bring back an innovative new icon for London. We brought something back that was 40% more efficient, more sustainable, better for air quality, better for people. It was technology-led. And what I felt was critical at the time, and I did convince the mayor to do it, and he agreed, was we were the first city to set up a digital office for London, because we could see, and I was convinced, that data-driven mass public service transformation was imperative and was going to be the future. And we needed to be able to talk to businesses about how we could do that. And that office set that era up. That was the past. So the question is, where are we now? particularly over the last decade. And forgive me, you will all have heard the phrase digital transformation. It's plastered everywhere in offices, on marketing material, in thought leadership articles. You know, it used to be called change management when I started. Then it turned to transformation. Then we added the word digital to it. But we have seen it happen. We have seen processes and systems and things that were more binary use compute, use technology to change. So even in the UK, and I'll use the UK as an example, if in the public sector I want to get a new passport, I want to do my taxes, I want to change my driving license, a website, it's transformed. There's no process, paper, literally that needs to be done. It's been digitally transformed. The public sector has changed. But something hasn't changed as well. And you'll all have noticed this, the user experience. Now, what do I mean? Well, I can use the National Health Service app, but you know, there's many clicks. It's quite clunky. Anything from a government perspective, click here, click here, click here. It doesn't feel as intuitive as, shall I say, you know, Apple, an Apple device, the sexy, smooth, non-friction process of buying something just through one click, where Amazon almost knows what I want to buy and is selling it to me before I even knew I wanted to have it, but I definitely want it. And within 24 hours, it's in my lap. That smoothness, that efficiency. Now, we may say that's a step too far, but actually it is the holy grail of experience, user experience. And it's the benchmark for where the public sector and government services should also be for the citizen. But why aren't we there yet? My friends, government designs like government works. Government by its very nature is bureaucratic. And so we get these clunky processes, whereas commercial businesses are entirely focused on the customer. So governments need to become more citizen-centric as we go forward. But what about artificial intelligence? Where does this play into the conversation of digital transformation? Over the last 10 to 15 years, there have been many promises around new technologies. And for those of us who've been, Yelena, you're in the Microsoft, right? You'll know these terms. IoT, edge computing, automation, quantum computing, big data, anything as a service, big cloud, cloud sovereignty. These are all areas of innovation and technology that have promised big change. But actually, they've been quite siloed in terms of what these technologies are. And I see AI as the glue that is bringing these things together so we can maximize the potential of these technologies. And even quantum computing, which is still to come the promise of what it will deliver, will only really be leveraged by the application of artificial intelligence. Now, all of us have heard of artificial intelligence now, haven't we? It's suddenly arrived. It didn't. Don't let anybody tell you that this has been a big change. Automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence has been going and developing for decades. And especially, I personally looked at it 7 or 8 years ago when in industry I was setting up a series of global AI labs with Google Cloud at that point. So commercially, the private sector has been developing this technology and evolving it for a very long time. But then there was a moment, 30th of November, 2022. Does anyone remember it? ChatGPT launched. The world changed. Suddenly, every one of us had access to this large language model, LLM, which could talk to us, give us solutions. And that dramatic change, that generative change, was the big bang moment for the public and for mass adoption of AI. And that pace of change has, ever since that moment, dramatically shifted the dial on people's perceptions, understanding, and investment and development in AI. But my friends, it has been very clear to me, particularly since that moment, that the global AI market, particularly native AI businesses, and what I mean by that are the businesses that actually design and develop AI systems and solutions, They are delivering and developing capabilities and seeing growth that is turbocharged across the world. Regardless of elections, regardless of politicians, regardless of tariffs, regardless of presidents, these businesses are growing, developing skills, gaining billions in investment, and designing the future. This is an exciting time for the AI industry. So what does this booming sector, and it is booming, want from us, or even people like me, policy makers, movers and shakers, people at this conference? What is it looking to hear from us? Well, as it happens, not very much. They're getting on with it. They're shaping, delivering, and engaging. They don't want anything from us, but they do want some help from us. They want to be able to inform, influence, and raise awareness of the key factors that are impacting them. And what I mean by that, and I'll list a few out, how firsthand AI adoption, implementation of systems and services is happening. They want people to understand that. The investment landscape. I said billions are going in, but they want people to understand what they're investing in, because they don't want people to think, well, I'll just throw money at something and it will work. They want to understand how government policies may affect their development. They want to support investment into the skills, not just now, but the future skills that will be required by this industry, the jobs that it will develop. They want to ensure, critically, the availability of large language data models, data sets, because this is the fuel for the capability. They want to understand where the compute power will come from, because this is also the engine that will drive what we'll need. It's amazing, it's raining now. I was wondering what was going on. And compute power, data, but there's a third leg to this equation, energy. They want people to understand the energy requirements, but in a sustainable way. How will we develop the energy requirements for the future that will support this industry, that will support the promise of what will be delivered? And last, and by no means least, as I try to shout out over this rain, is they want people to understand that if you're going to regulate and you're going to provide control over some of the risks that there might be in this area, then do it in a balanced way and do it listening to them, don't do it to them, which is a very big risk for governments. The industry is clear. Regulation has to be proportionate. And overall, I've had a lot of discussions with these businesses and with investors. And they've talked about other regulatory environments, and this is a critical point. Now, for those of us who are close to this world, we may see that in the US, I started talking about regulation and the rain has stopped. There you go. In the US, it's a lot more light touch, free market, if you may want to call it that. Some call it the Wild West when it comes to regulation. People get on, they develop, they deliver, and then they fix or they litigate each other depending on how they see things developing, and they sort of create a market around it. The EU has recently developed an AI Act regulatory framework that is implemented. It has felt, and this is how it's been seen by others, this is not just my opinion, and I've heard MEPs, members of the European Parliament who have worked on this act, speak as they may have gone a bit too far in the heavy hand of regulation. Why do they say that? Because at this point, where we are in the development of this industry, it is about investment. Investment will drive the jobs, the innovation, and the services. And this regulation is stifling investment in the EU zone. That is the fact. That is what they are saying. So the question is, what does this mean for all of us? You've got free, ultra-free market, turbocharged approach to the US. You've got the EU regulating pretty heavily. In the UK, we are having a debate. Where do we go? And actually, that's a healthy debate. We are going to learn from what's happening in different environments. And I would say to anyone, any region, any geography that is outside of these zones, look at what's happening in these zones, listen to the businesses who are trying to operate in those environments, and hear what they say about the challenges they're facing or how they are delivering on the opportunity. That, and I say this personally as a legislator, I feel is the best way that we can help design and develop the best type of legislation to take advantage of AI for the people. And I'm not trying to be risk adverse. I'm not saying there aren't challenges and risks out there when it comes to AI. But right now, in the reality of the economic world that we live in, it is a race, especially at this stage. What we do right now, what economic policies and regulatory frameworks we set up, will set the framework not just for the next decade, but beyond. So we must think carefully about what we do. But AI continues to travel and move at a pace beyond regulation. And the tools that are coming up will also democratize our accessibility to this. What do I mean by that? The availability of this technology will not just be to tech giants, it will be to every single one of us. Large language models like Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Grok, and any others. Who's not used one of these platforms yet? So you're all using an AI model at the moment. Look at that. And we're still at just the early stage of it. But to write your essays? But at the same time, there is a double-edged sword. We do know that. There's automation, there's disruption, there is jobs, there is raising ethical questions, there's intellectual property challenges, there's privacy, there's bias, and there is control. And that's why I mentioned regulation. Regulation has to balance between the economic opportunity we face, the race that is on globally, but also ensuring that those things are considered. I am acutely aware of that. And the challenge for us will be to balance our approach to this. As a UK parliamentarian who has sat on that line between public, private sector and development of public services, I can see the challenge on the horizon, not just for me, but for all of us. How we will help shape a fast-moving digital society that is digitally fair, that is digitally inclusive, that is secure, and will hopefully mean that for us, our children, our children's children, that the era of an AI, post-AI transformation era, we will look back and say, and we hopefully will say, we protected an advanced society when faced with the greatest moment of technological innovation and transformation in human history. Because I believe when we look back to the 2020s, and I know there's a lot going on in the 2020s at the moment, we will note our businesses, our politics, and our way of life, and our society itself changed, transformed. And we, all of us, hopefully laid the foundations for a better future for all of us. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to be leaving straight after this to go back to the UK, but I did say I will take some questions now from the audience, so please, yes, please.
Fully agree with all of things that you mentioned, but for me, I'm coming from security world, and regarding that, my biggest concern regarding AI is security, for sure. But what is your, let's say, what is your opinion about the biggest AI challenge that we need to resolve to make AI fit for use and fit for purpose? Because in the end of the day, every one of us tried, but if we don't find some meaningful implementation and scenarios that can make our life in reality easier and on acceptable price, I'm afraid that it would be just one of more new IT things. Like, for example, a few years ago, everyone spoke about blockchain. That was buzzword from everywhere. So what do you think about that?
I think several things there, Yelena. One is that, look, AI is not the technology in its own right, like blockchain was, and then looking for a solution. AI is the application of that to things we're already doing. Let's take medicine, for example. Let's take research. Let's take advances in breast cancer. The application of AI to help accelerate the work that's going on. That's the kind of thing that will deliver outputs and benefits to people that I think we need to think about. We can talk about agri-tech, we can talk about sustainable solutions, we can talk about mass manufacturing, we can talk about food processing, we can think of all things that we can apply the technology to. But, the big but, and this is the thing that I think we need to think about, is trust. And we need to trust the outcomes that come out of the technology when it's applied to the problem. And to do that, there's a term that's used when people are using AI. We must have the human in the loop. Do you know this phrase? And it's generally used around agentic AI, so where agents, the bots that are in the system, you try and do something, you're directed to a bot, it may be AI-based, it doesn't answer your question, you go around in a loop, you get frustrated, you start thinking, I wish I could just talk to somebody. That's not a good, these are early stage solutions, but suddenly you need a human in the loop to oversee that. I think it's not about human in the loop. We must, to maintain trust at this point in the evolution and adoption of AI, have human oversight. And that will be about having people who are looking at these things continuously, not just when something's going wrong, to see where is it working, what patterns can we see. So when we talk about jobs and the future of jobs and what we're going to go and do, there's a whole array of human oversight jobs that will need to be evolved. That's, critically, that's where I think, we need to really focus.
Hi. What is the word in the parliament and with your colleagues from across the other countries, EU Union specifically, with regards to the next generation and how to address the education systems in all of our countries, which are not appropriate for the future that we are delivering to them? What is being discussed? What do you see in planning? Which countries are moving ahead? What is the UK doing?
That's a very big question. I've got to say, I have to admit, I'm not the educational specialist, but on the skills-based question, I think, look, all of us in my career, when I studied architecture, and I don't mean digital architecture, I mean pure architecture as an undergraduate well over 30 years ago. Did that set me up for a career in technology, politics, delivery, etc.? Yes and no. It wasn't the core hard skills around those areas that I've worked in that I gained, but I gained critical thinking, I gained an ability to maybe analyze, present, various other things. So I think that linear line that we sometimes talk about for especially younger people, that you must have this to do that, is a bit more fluid and flexible. And yes, there are different types of skills that people will need. I also don't entirely buy in that everybody needs to do maths, everybody needs to become a programmer, everybody needs to be a developer. I wasn't that person. I'm sure there's a lot of people who aren't that type of person. So, you're not going to force everyone into that. So we need... Yes, yeah. Right. I will agree with you. I think we need more creative people in the mix. We need people who are thinking in a very different way. We need to have, different ways of learning. But I admit I'm not the educational specialist, but I know that I've taken a non-linear, non-traditional route to where I've got to. I think there's a lot more people out there who can do that as well. And I think we need to open that up sometimes to people.
One more question.
Ilir Kishmari speaking from Kosovo, AI engineer. I followed the panel discussion yesterday and also your speech today. And as far as I could understand, your focus is more in the AI that is being built in today. But we are so near, like the predictions for AGI, like when the computer can think just as a human and also super intelligence, that are the predictions that in the near future we will have that, are like very real. The chances are very real, like the OpenAI and other companies, they have done a great job in that. And like the last research paper that I read, we are supposed to have something like very good by 2027. How are we going to regulate and control this? Because also I have seen a lot of engineers from Google and from big companies that are being very skeptical about the regulations that will happen after AGI or superintelligence.
You know, we can have this debate, and it's a good point you raise, endlessly, about the potential, the assumptions, the where it might go. There's the Armageddon approach, it will take over, we won't have control. There's the approach of how long will that take to get to. And it does generate a lot of fear, but also I think, you know, I said this yesterday, we have a lot of technology and a lot of capability that humans have developed over time that can destroy ourselves right now, if we choose to, nuclear weapons. We put control on that once we developed it. Now, people say nuclear weapons aren't the same as AI, and I don't underestimate our ingenuity to both develop things, but also at the right time to help control things. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not blind to the risks that there are, but I think we have to be aware that we cannot stop innovation. You cannot control innovation happening. But what we do need to do is when we see risks, we have to proportionately develop the guardrails to support against those risks. And I think it's an ongoing debate. The challenge we have with this is we all look forward and go, when that happens, when AI takes control, what are we going to do? It's not going to be a huge leap. We're going to move incrementally towards it. And as we move towards it, we will learn and adapt. That's my confident approach. Well, I think it's an incremental thing. You know, look, anyone who's worked in around a risk environment, you have all the various different risks that might happen to, you know, act of God and everything else. But you don't map out everything to do with if an act of God happens, because you'd be there all day. And you go down the profile of the risks and you work out solutions. And then incrementally, as the risk priority changes or evolves or adapts, as we become better aware of what might happen, we have to respond. And I think that's why all governments, all politicians, all parliamentarians have to work closer with industry. We have to be better in understanding how things are developing so that when we do need to intervene or we do need to act, we are well informed and we do it appropriately. I think that's going to be the biggest risk and challenge for us, is to stay lockstep with the developments as they go forward. Yes.
Right?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that last bit.
Like on a Facebook,
yes,
determines if a kid in high school is going to commit a suicide or not. So we were, as a society, we were totally unaware of the consequences on humans, on individuals, on businesses, yes. So with AI, which will be and is constantly present, how can we estimate or even, you know, prevent such negative consequences on individuals and then on a society as
look,
well?
I'm going to be honest with you. We can't. It's like I can't predict if I walk outside and I get hit by a bus and, you know, it happens. We developed the motor car. How many people die on roads every day, every year in countries all over the world? And we try our best to keep people safe. We try to legislate. We try to bring seatbelts, safety, security systems, traffic light. But we can't live in a zero-risk society. So I know the debate, and I understand it. And we will, all of us, it's not just an individual, that society will demand that we have a level of safety as we move forward with these new technologies. And I think that's the good thing, because we are learning from the development of social media, both the opportunity, but the huge risks that it has opened up, not just for young people, across the board in terms of, you know, the negative impact, but there is huge positives as well. So I think the age that we've been through, this age of social media, digital transformation, will help us be better informed in our approach to the AI transformation that's coming. That's the best we should do as we go forward. Thank you very much.